Welcome to the Refreshing Leadership Podcast with me, Maya Goodker, and specifically welcome to our August Refresh series. This month, I am resharing some of our most impactful episodes centered around the theme of rest, rejuvenation, being a little bit more dreamy. If you're a long-time listener, there's a chance you might be hearing one of these episodes for the second time. This is actually good news. When I listen to a podcast episode the second time, that's when I actually integrate it into my life. The first time, I'm listening at a cognitive, intellectual level, getting familiar with the concept, which is of course super helpful. So if you're listening to this for the first time, my hope is that all of the episodes this month will help you embrace a refreshing summer, whatever that means for you. I personally am taking a much needed creative pause, and I encourage you to join me in your own version of that. I look forward to connecting with you in the second week of September. And until then, I hope these episodes help you to really embrace your own refreshing August. Let's dive in. I'm wondering if you've ever found yourself listless when you're supposed to be relaxing and resting. Rest is often used as a catch-all term, but in reality, there are different types of rest. And if we can understand these, it can aid us in more effectively switching off when we most need it. And I'm now going to break this down in this episode. At the fundamental level and at the bottom of my pyramid is physical rest. And this is symbolically at the bottom of this visual because it is that foundational aspect of rest. It comprises our basic survival needs, and much has been written about the importance of sleep. Sometimes it can feel like a punch in the teeth when we're hearing how important sleep is, when we're dealing with little kids who can curtail this sleep. And I early on did a podcast episode, quite an extensive one with Arti, where we talked how to deal with sleep when it's not entirely in our control. So I will also link that episode in the show notes here. It can mess with our sleep. There is going to be a certain amount of things that are within our control, but every now and then I think we all need a bit of a check-in on our sleep hygiene and where we are with it. I certainly know that for myself, I will have periods when I'm in a really great role and I've got just a good sleep and I wake up feeling refreshed. I have other times when I sort of allow life to sort of compound and end up going to sleep later than I should, probably eating later than I should, waking up feeling sluggish, and it's a whole spiral. Likewise, we know that for strength, our body needs rest to be able to grow new muscles. And there are lots of studies exploring this from an athletic perspective. So this is a really foundational piece. And obviously, if we're feeling out of whack, then relooking at our current sleep is a great starting point and not to be ignored. Indeed, you could argue that if you don't get this right, the other pieces of rest are not going to really fall into place. The next one that I've also put near the bottom, because it's happening on a daily basis, whether we like it or not, is relaxation. So if I'm going to define this relaxation in the way that I've included it here, it's basically any time that we take a break from work or allow ourselves not to be in a focused delivery mode. So this might involve chatting with colleagues, getting up from our desk if we have a desk job. And this is something that is probably going to happen whether we like it or not. So either we're going to be able to do this intentionally, or our mind at some point is going to say, okay, I'm tired of focusing on this task now, and I'm going to drift off whether you like it or not. And you'll find yourself then losing productivity and perhaps drifting into less productive activities and that all-consuming mindless scroll, for example. I've highlighted in the past in some of my social media episodes the need to be able to shut off from the digital world from time to time, whether that is a quick stroll outside without your phone or having a rule around no phones in the bedroom, which sounds easy enough, but I only achieve that a couple of times a week, or I have periods where I'm doing it really well and then others where I'm not. I do notice the benefits when I do it, but I just acknowledge that some of these rules sound a lot easier than they are to put into practice. If we can have powerful daily breaks, though, which give us true moments of relaxation, we can then dive back into our work with renewed focus and energy. I just encourage you to think about your current relaxation on a scale of 0 to 10. So, those daily moments that you take to recharge your brain from a task that might have required a bit more focus. Are you intentional about those, or do they just sort of happen? A really simple thing to do is, rather than trying to plan out your whole day, is just looking ahead to the next immediate chunk of time, that sort of 2 to 3 hour window, or even less if that seems overwhelming and long, and just say, okay, I'm going to do the next task for about 45 minutes. I think that's all my brain's going to handle. And then I'm going to allow myself a 10-minute break or 15-minute break where I'm going to get up, go for a quick stroll, get a cup of tea or coffee, go and chat to somebody, whatever it is, maybe do some stretching, anything that makes it feel like a pleasant and rewarding moment away from your desk. And over time, you'll start to notice what your concentration patterns are. And this is a big thing with Cal Newport about how long we're actually able to be in focus and do deep work. And the more that we can be intentional about these, the nicer our relaxation can be, and the more it can sort of be a really important part of our day and aid us in getting the stuff that we want to get done in good timeframes, so that work doesn't just bleed into the whole day. So we've got these two things that I think are basically happening on a daily basis: physical rest and relaxation. They're going to happen one way or another. The question is, how mindful are we about them? And how intentional can we be about making them work for us and improving their quality? So these are things that are going to happen one way or another, but what is the quality of them? And that's what we can work on, and that's what we can enhance to increase our quality of rest and relaxation, and therefore enhance our days. The next 3 R's might not happen daily, but I do hope they can be built into as rituals into our day or week. The first one is something that comes up a lot in coaching, or in fact, coaching is one process for, and that is reflection. So sometimes when we hit the pillow or we land at our holiday, our mind is still mulling over, ruminating, processing whatever remains unprocessed from the day or from back home. This can produce spirals of thinking or just leave us restless. It might be first thing in the morning that we wake up and we're aware of that thinking. If we can focus on high quality reflection, it can help us to avoid energy zapping rumination. So if processing can be a more deliberate activity by writing it down, talking it through with somebody, it can really start to not get us locked into spirals of thinking, and it can make us much more aware of our thought processes rather than just a recipient of them. One of my favorites includes morning pages. So I'm really aware that when I wake up in the morning, I do have thoughts circulating in my mind, and I find it much easier to just download these from my brain onto the page where they get some objectivity. And the other way of doing it is a few reflective lines in your journal before bed, which I often do as well. The main thing is that there is a journal by the bedside. My current routine is not the 5 a.m. club or the 6 a.m. club, but I am getting up, going getting myself a coffee, getting back into bed, and getting some really nice journaling done. Sometimes I do it into my laptop, and sometimes I do it in my journal. Just depends which zone I'm in. So the next one is replenish. And we all have needs. So there are some fundamental human needs. We have psychological needs, such as those for autonomy, that's a sense of control over our lives, connection to others, and a sense of competence in what we do. These are fundamental psychological needs, and there are others, but these kind of often recur as some of the really enduring ones, whichever theory you're looking at. Others depend on our individual preferences. So, for example, depending on where we are on an introversion extroversion scale, we're going to have different needs for socializing and social activity, and different needs for time to ourselves. And it's really important that we recognize these in ourselves, but also in our loved ones and those around us, because everyone's going to have different needs on this. Likewise, we're all going to have different things that energize us. So it's really important to be able to identify some of our needs and then check in as to when was the last time that we met them. For example, one of mine is to be creative. And I really feel that my cup is filled when engaging in creative activities. This could be as simple as coming up with an innovative solution or something left field to a problem. I know that I really light up when I get to do things like that. So I really enjoy doing that with the kids. I obviously enjoy doing that in my job as a coach. And for me, what I've learned is that it doesn't need to be like a big art project. It can be an innovative conversation where we come up with a cool new solution, and that will light me up. But likewise, I also get hugely energized by having great conversations with my friends. So I encourage you to think about what those things are. Sometimes we've gone so far into our lives that we almost don't know what they are anymore, what those things are that energize us. This is a little note or reminder to just stop and think to yourself, what are those things that really energize you and that can replenish you when you're feeling a bit depleted? Another one of these three R's, which don't necessarily happen on a daily basis unless we create conditions for them, is rejuvenation. So, this can be a great way to start a switch off period. And the way I'm defining it, and again, there could be other definitions, is by engaging in flow activities or hobbies, anything that can create a period of detachment from our normal world and thoughts. So, sport can be a great way of doing this, unless, of course, you're an athlete and that is your work and your job. So, it's not going to help you maybe switch off in the same way. But from talking to clients, I know I'm not the only one who gets that switch off on the ski slopes, for example. You're completely engaged. Your mind has to be totally focused and basically in a state of flow so that you don't get knocked over or fall over. Once we then return back to our own heads, we have perspective, we have detachment, because we've been able to create that real shift from our normal thinking and our normal worlds. Now, I've noticed my daughter, she's got a lovely crochet habit, and I think that gives her a really lovely switch off that is not a screen-based one. She obviously has that as well, but it's just nice to see that she's cultivating another activity that requires absorption, requires a concentration, and can provide that change, I guess, to whatever it is, school or other things that will be going on. So, do you have any obvious rejuvenation practices or habits? Have a little think what those could be for you. As I've said in mine, I know I've got definitely the one that springs to mind is skiing, but that only happens if I'm lucky on an annual basis. So, I need to have other things that do that. I don't put my daily walks into that category because I don't necessarily switch off so completely. Sometimes I find running a workshop or certain coaching sessions, I find them a complete switch off because I'm so absorbed, but that's work. So, it takes a little bit of time to filter down what this list is. I know that sketching was definitely that for me. And when I engaged in drawing and looking at things and then drawing them, I literally noticed changes in my skin. Like I could see my skin look different because I'd been in this period of focus. So, what are the physical changes for you that make you feel like you're completely switching off, completely absorbed in something that you really love doing? And have a think about what those are for you. So let me get on to the third of these R's, and that is refresh. So, on the subject of detachment, a change of scene can often offer new perspectives, and this alone can give us rest, energy, and inspiration. We might get this on a walk in nature, daily walk in nature. I think that's where I would put my daily walk. It's in that refreshing category. Certainly, it's one reason people love going on holiday because they get that complete detachment. They get a different perspective. I know that when we were on a mountain last year and we sat and had a coffee break, my husband said, how is this for perspective change? You just feel like your normal world is both small and far away, and it can be a really lovely zoom out. So unlike rejuvenation, which is about activities and doing activities that really make us feel energized and enlightened, this is about being in a different environment, seeing different things, almost like an assault on the senses that changes the way that we look at our normal lives. So what I notice is that this last one, refresh, which is about basically just going and being in a different place. And sometimes people can rely on this alone to give us a sense of rest. But then what can happen is we rely on that, but it doesn't work anymore because we need to add rejuvenating hobbies in. We need to add reflection in so that we can really reap the benefits of that change of scene. So if you just transport yourself off somewhere and you've not bothered to do any reflection and you're not going to engage in any activities when you're there that give you that real sense of flow, so you're not, maybe going to do any sports or other activities that give you that, you might find yourself not getting the full benefits of refreshing, that you might find yourself not getting the fully refreshing benefits of that change of scene. They're just worth thinking about. Thank you for bearing with me on all of these different R's. I've got one final R, which is definitely not something that would automatically feature into our day or even our week. But sometimes it's actually what we need, because if we're really struggling to relax and switch off when there's a lot of clutter around us, whether that's mental clutter, so we're feeling in our minds that we've got too many different things and we can't make sense of them, or physical clutter, then we may need a really, like a proper reset. We may need a reset of our physical environment. We may need a reset mentally. I personally think that the morning pages, when you wake up and you download what's in your mind, really help with mental clutter. But you may just need to do a physical declutter of your space. And what I wrote about in my post was, on one hand, these may not feature as part of your day or your week, but could they? Could they feature as a weekly ritual? Could they feature as a daily ritual? Of course, with mental clutter, again, therapy, spiritual practices, meditation, mindfulness, all of these things could really help as well. So that's the final one. Again, stands a bit separate from the others because it probably is something that you could do like a huge reset and then you could reap the benefits for a period of time afterwards. But you probably need to do some planning and clear some time to be able to do that one if you're doing it on a big scale. So have you found your missing R? As I've gone through all of these, have you thought, oh, yeah, I probably do that one, probably did that one, didn't really realize it, but actually I don't do any rejuvenation, for example, or I don't do any replenishment, or I'm not doing enough replenishment, which is why I'm not feeling great, which is why I'm feeling burnt out. It's not because I'm working too hard, it's because I'm not doing any of the things that make me feel alive. So let me know. Let me know if you found your missing R, or if you think there are areas which you could definitely dial up. I'm really curious to hear how this works for you. And I really look forward to connecting with you next time. Until then, have a happy and restful week. And maybe you'll just notice over the course of the week the different types of rest that you're experiencing throughout the week, and you'll be more mindful of them and you might enjoy them a little bit more. I look forward to connecting with you next time. Take care till then. Bye-bye.